AITA for refusing to stay silent after my ex was praised for escaping me? I'm Wyatt, 39, and Brooke was my wife long enough for me to know the difference between a rough patch and a performance. By the time our marriage ended, I had learned that some people don't just tell their side of the story. They rehearse it, embellish it, and make sure the room is seated before they begin. We used to be the couple everyone paired together at anniversary dinners and family barbecues. The ones people assumed had figured marriage out because we remembered birthdays, brought extra chairs, and never looked messy in public. I was the guy who kept a clean shirt in my car because Brooke always said I looked better when I planned ahead. She was the woman who fixed my collar before we walked into a room, then later used that same room to cut me down with a smile. For a long time, I told myself her little shots in front of people were stress, or bad timing, or jokes I was taking too hard. Then I noticed she only apologized when there was no audience. The fundraiser was supposed to be harmless. Graham, an old mutual acquaintance, emailed me an invitation with a short note that said, "No pressure, just people catching up for a good cause. It would be nice to see you again." I stared at that email for 2 days before I answered. After the divorce, I had gotten used to declining anything that smelled like our old circle: cookouts, birthday dinners, watch parties, holiday brunches. There was always a chance Brooke would be there, or someone would say, "I'm not taking sides," while looking at me like I had already been convicted. But 4 years is a long time to keep avoiding rooms. I had rebuilt enough of my life to know I didn't owe my absence to people who had never asked me what happened, so I accepted. That night, I parked in the lot and sat with both hands on the steering wheel for a minute, watching people cross toward the entrance in jackets, dresses, and forced smiles. The folder was on the passenger seat. A plain manila folder with printed emails, bank records, screenshots, and a transcript of a voicemail I had saved even when I hated knowing it existed. I hadn't brought it because I planned to use it. I brought it because experience teaches you what optimism forgets. Inside, the lobby had name tags arranged in rows, folded programs in a neat stack, a donor wall near the entrance, and people balancing plastic cups of wine while pretending not to notice who had arrived with whom. I picked up my name tag and had just peeled off the backing when I saw the seating chart. Brooke's name was near the front. Mason's name was printed right beside hers. My stomach didn't drop the way I expected. It tightened, sure, but it wasn't jealousy. That surprised me. It felt more like walking into the answer to a question I had stopped asking. Mason had been my friend long before Brooke became my wife. He was the guy who showed up early to help move furniture and stayed late to eat the last slice of pizza over the sink. He had known my family, known my flaws, known the way I handled conflict. He also knew exactly how to make me look like the problem without ever raising his voice. I was still looking at the chart when 2 women near the check-in table started talking behind me. "Brooke's speaking tonight," one asked. "You didn't know? She's one of the honorees. Her whole thing about rebuilding after that controlling marriage." The other woman lowered her voice, but not enough. Mason said it took her years to feel safe enough to talk about it. I kept my face still. That was something I had gotten good at during my marriage, looking calm while something ugly moved under my ribs. I picked up one of the programs and stepped away from the table. There it was, printed in careful event language under the resilience segment. Brooke will share her journey of rebuilding after a marriage that taught her to disappear. There was no name. Not mine. Not yet. But anyone in that room who knew us would know exactly who she meant. I stood beside a silent auction table covered with gift baskets and restaurant certificates, reading the sentence again while people walked around me like the floor had shifted only under my feet. Before Brooke became the woman being honored for surviving me, she was the woman who could make a private wound sound like a party trick. It started small. At dinner with friends, she would tell a story that belonged between us and polish it just enough to get laughs. "Wyatt reorganized the pantry again," she would say, rolling her eyes. "I swear, if a can of soup faces the wrong way, he needs a breathing exercise." People laughed because it sounded harmless. Organized husband, dramatic wife, a little joke. I laughed too at first. Then it became our arguments. "He gave me a whole speech last night because I said he was being quiet," she told a table one Saturday, dipping a chip into salsa like she was sharing a weather report. Apparently, I'm not allowed to notice moods in my own house. I looked at her and said quietly, "Brooke." She smiled bigger. "See? That's the tone." Mason laughed first. He always did. Not loud enough to be cruel, just early enough to give everyone else permission. Come on, man, he said, clapping my shoulder. You do get intense about this stuff. That became the pattern. Brooke would take a private issue, turn it into entertainment, and if I asked her to stop, Mason would make it sound like I was being uptight. Elaine, Brooke's mother, would usually be nearby with a look that said I was lucky her daughter tolerated me. Elaine never yelled. She did something worse. She spoke in that soft, disappointed voice people use when they want witnesses. Once, after a family dinner where Brooke joked that I needed written consent from the furniture before moving a chair, Elaine cornered me in her kitchen while the coffee got cold between us. A secure husband doesn't get embarrassed by his wife having a voice, she said. I remember looking past her at Brooke, who was sitting at the table scrolling through her phone like the conversation had nothing to do with her. A voice isn't the same thing as a weapon, I said. Elaine's mouth tightened. That kind of language is exactly what worries me. That was how it worked. If Brooke embarrassed me, she was strong. If I said it hurt, I was threatened by her strength. If I asked for privacy, I was trying to control the narrative. By the end, I could barely name a boundary without someone treating it like evidence. At home, Brooke was softer, at least when she needed to be. I would wait until the dishes were in the sink and the laundry basket was half full on the couch before I brought it up, because talking in public never ended well. I'm not asking you to lie, I told her one night. I'm asking you not to turn me into a punchline. She leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. So now I need permission to tell my own friends how I feel? That's not what I said. It's what you mean. You want to manage how people see me. I want our private life to stay private. Her eyes filled with tears, right on cue. You don't get how small you make me feel when you talk like that. I wish I could say I saw through it immediately. I didn't. I loved her. I had promised to build a life with her. When someone you love cries, part of you wants to put the fire out, even if you didn't light it. So I would soften. I would lower my voice. I would explain again. And somehow, the night would end with me apologizing for the tone I used while asking her to stop hurting me. Mason changed around that time too, or maybe I finally noticed. His texts to me became short. Busy week. Maybe later. Sounds good. But under Brooke's vague posts, he had paragraphs. When she posted, learning that peace feels scary when chaos was called love, Mason commented, proud of you for finding your voice. When she posted, some people only love you when you stay small, Mason reacted within minutes. I asked him once, while we were standing near the grill at a cookout, if everything was okay between us. He gave me that loose, easy smile that used to make people trust him. Of course. What? You just seem closer to Brooke than to me lately. His eyebrows went up like I had made something dirty out of clean water. Brooke's going through stuff, man. I'm trying to be supportive. Don't make it weird. I didn't make it weird. I asked a question. Right? He said, turning a burger. But see, that's what I mean. You come in hot over nothing. Nothing. That was the word everyone used when they wanted me to swallow something whole. The anniversary dinner was not nothing. It was our 8th wedding anniversary, and Brooke wanted a private dining room at a restaurant we liked because, as she put it, if we're going to celebrate, let's actually celebrate. There were printed menus, wine glasses lined up along the table, and relatives taking pictures before the food arrived. Paige, my younger sister, sat near the end, already watching Brooke like she expected trouble. Paige never liked pretending. She was 34 then and had the kind of blunt loyalty that made people uncomfortable because she noticed too much. She had warned me for months. She keeps setting traps and calling them jokes, Paige told me once. You keep stepping around them as if that means they aren't there. That night, Brooke wore a cream dress and smiled through every toast. For the first hour, it was almost nice. I remember thinking maybe we had turned a corner. Maybe she understood how close we were to breaking something we couldn't repair. Then she stood up with her wine glass. I want to say something about marriage, she began. Everyone quieted. Someone lifted a phone to record, probably expecting something sweet. Brooke looked at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Marriage teaches you a lot. For example, it teaches you that some men want a wife who claps quietly and thanks them for pulling out the chair. A few people chuckled, uncertain. I looked at her. Brooke. She tilted her head. No, let me finish. Because I spent years trying to be small enough for Wyatt's comfort. Small enough not to hurt his ego. Small enough not to make him feel fragile. My face went hot, not because the words were loud, but because they were polished. She had practiced that. I could hear it. Mason sat 2 seats away from me. He looked down into his drink, smiling. Brooke continued, and tonight, I just want to celebrate that I'm not small. I'm not quiet. And I'm not responsible for a man who can't handle a woman like me. Mason laughed first. It wasn't a huge laugh. It didn't need to be. A few others joined in because discomfort makes cowards of people who want dessert more than truth. I pushed my chair back slightly. Stop. Brooke pointed her glass toward me. See? This is what I mean. He can't take a joke unless he's the one in control. Elaine glared at me like I had ruined the night by having a face. I looked around that table and understood something so clearly it almost felt calm. If I argued, I would be aggressive. If I stayed, she would keep cutting. If I cried, she would say I was manipulating the room. If I asked to leave, she would say I was punishing her. Every door in that room had been locked except the actual one. So I took off my wedding ring. The sound it made when I set it beside her wine glass was small, but everyone heard it. Brooke's smile froze. I stood up and said, "You can keep the room. I'm keeping my dignity." Then I walked out. No slammed door. No shouting. No dramatic speech in the parking lot. I got into my car, sat there until my hands stopped shaking, and drove home to a house that still had our framed wedding photo in the hallway. By the time I got inside, my phone was already lighting up. Elaine left the first voicemail. "You proved exactly who you are tonight. Brooke is devastated. You humiliated my daughter on her anniversary, and I hope you're proud of yourself." Mason texted, "Brooke's a mess. You owe her an apology, man." The group chat started with careful language. Not judging, but that was harsh. Maybe everyone should give Brooke space. "Wyatt, I know you're upset, but walking out like that was not okay." Then Brooke posted a photo of a candlelit table with my empty chair cropped just enough to make the point. The caption said, "Sometimes the moment you stop shrinking is the moment they leave." Choosing myself tonight. I put my phone face down on the coffee table and sat on the floor because the couch felt too normal. Paige showed up 40 minutes later with takeout fries and the kind of anger that moves quietly because it knows exactly where it's going. She didn't ask if I was okay. She knew I wasn't. She sat on the floor across from me, took a fry out of the bag, and said, "Don't delete anything. I'm not going to fight everybody. You don't have to use the receipts today," she said. "But you better keep them, because she's not done writing." I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to believe Brooke would cool down, maybe be embarrassed, maybe realize she had gone too far. Instead, my silence became my mistake. Brooke turned my decision not to fight into proof that I had no defense. The separation happened fast. Her things disappeared from the house in waves. Clothes first, then makeup, then a box of framed photos she took only because she looked good in them. The divorce wasn't clean, but it was quieter than people expected. My lawyer told me the same thing in 3 different emails. Don't respond emotionally. Preserve records. So I did. I saved emails. I printed bank statements. I copied screenshots. I let my lawyer speak when my own mouth wanted to say too much. That was when I noticed the transfers. Not huge amounts. That would have been easier to catch and harder to explain. These were smaller, spread out over months. $300 here, $600 there, and a little under $1,000 twice. Withdrawals and transfers from our shared checking account before the anniversary dinner, before the official separation, before Brooke told people I had left her scrambling. When my lawyer asked about them, Brooke's side called it reasonable preparation in an emotionally unsafe environment. I was tired enough to accept a settlement just to end the noise. I didn't want the house of cards. I wanted out of the room. But Paige kept everything. She had screenshots in her email because, as she said, phones break, people lie, email search survives. Over the next few years, Brooke's public version grew legs. She never said my full name in posts. She didn't have to. We had enough mutual acquaintances for the implication to do the work. Healing from control is not linear. Choosing myself after years of being made small. Some women are called difficult when they finally stop asking permission to breathe. People stopped inviting me places. Some unfollowed me. Some sent those messages that pretend to be neutral while dragging a verdict behind them. "Hey, just wanted to say I hope you're doing the work. I had no idea things were so bad between you two. No hate, but I think Brooke needs support right now." I typed 100 responses and sent almost none. The problem with vague posts is that everyone gets to fill in the villain with whoever they already decided not to like. I told myself I was being mature. Maybe part of me was. Another part was just exhausted. I had confused avoidance with dignity for so long that I could barely tell the difference. That was why the fundraiser felt like a test I hadn't studied for. I stood in the hallway with the program folded in my hand and called Paige. She answered on the second ring. What happened? You say hello like a normal person? Not when you called during an event you didn't want to attend. What happened? I looked toward the ballroom. Mason was near the small podium, adjusting the microphone. Brooke stood beside him in a dark dress, one hand resting briefly on his wrist. Casual. Practiced. Too easy. Brooke is being honored, I said, for surviving a controlling marriage. Mason is introducing her, or helping or something. Paige was quiet for half a second. Then she said, Of course he is. Did you know? No. But I knew that invitation was fishy. I'm nearby. Nearby where? Parking lot nearby. Don't start with me. Despite everything, I almost laughed. She said, Listen to me. Don't let her put your name in her mouth and call it healing. She hasn't named me. She will if she thinks the room is warm enough. I have the folder. Good. Check the third section. The Mason stuff. I sent you backups too. I stepped outside to my car, opened the passenger door, and took the folder. The night air felt cooler than it should have. Under the lot lights, I flipped through pages held by paper clips. There was the screenshot Paige had saved from a group chat I wasn't part of, dated 3 days before the anniversary dinner. Brooke had written, He needs to be taken down a little. People need to see him as the problem before he starts acting wounded. Below it, Mason had replied, Make him look like the jealous husband before he even opens his mouth. Then anything he says sounds like proof. My thumb stopped on the page. I had read that line before, but in the parking lot outside that fundraiser, it landed differently. It wasn't just after-the-fact gossip. It wasn't people comforting Brooke after a bad night. It was planning. Another page showed messages between Brooke and Mason from before we separated. Nothing explicit enough to make a courtroom gasp, but intimate in the way people get when they're building a world with someone else's walls. He asked about us again, Brooke wrote. Mason responded, Then make it about control. Say he hates you having support. Brooke, Elaine says I should protect myself before he starts acting crazy. Mason, she's right. Move what you need now. He'll be too busy defending his ego to notice. Then the bank records. Highlighted dates. Transfers that had looked random until the messages gave them a shadow. And the voicemail transcript. Brooke had left it 2 weeks after I moved out, when I had finally texted asking her to stop implying I was abusive online. Her voice was calm in the recording. That was what made it worse. People already picked a side, Wyatt. Don't embarrass yourself trying to change that. No one will believe you over me. I had saved it because my lawyer told me to preserve records. I had hated myself a little for keeping it, like the file itself meant I was still living inside the marriage. That night, it felt less like a wound and more like a boundary. I walked back inside with the folder tucked under my arm and found Graham near the donor cards, smiling too hard at a couple who looked like they wanted to talk about tax receipts. When he saw my face, his smile faded. Wyatt, he said, everything okay? No. I need 2 minutes. He glanced toward the ballroom. This isn't really the place. It will be the place if Brooke uses your microphone to identify me as abusive or controlling. His shoulders stiffened. She hasn't named you. Then tell her not to start. Graham rubbed a hand over his mouth. Look, this is a fundraiser. There are donors here. I can't have a personal dispute blow up the program. I'm not asking to hijack your event, I said. I'm asking you not to let my name be used as a fundraising prop. He looked uncomfortable, which told me he knew more than he wanted to admit. Brooke's story is part of why people connect with the work, he said carefully. A false story about me is not advocacy. It's reputation laundering. Wyatt. I opened the folder and handed him the printed voicemail transcript first. Then the screenshot where Brooke wrote that I needed to be taken down. Then the message with Mason telling her to make me look jealous before I opened my mouth. Graham read them with the expression of a man watching a polished centerpiece catch fire. Are these real? He asked. Yes. Paige has original backups with timestamps. My lawyer has copies. I'm not asking you to believe my feelings. I'm showing you what I have. He swallowed and looked toward the ballroom again. What do you want? A boundary. If she speaks generally, I'll sit there and drink bad coffee like everyone else. If she names me or clearly identifies me, I get to respond with relevant evidence. Not every private detail, just enough to correct the lie. That could ruin the night. Then tell her not to use me. Graham closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he looked older than he had 10 minutes earlier. I'll talk to her, he said. He did. I watched from across the room as he approached Brooke and spoke quietly. Brooke's face went still. Mason leaned in, his jaw tightening. Elaine, seated nearby, looked from Graham to me and then away. For a second, I thought maybe that would be enough. Then Brooke looked directly at me. Her expression flickered. Surprise first, then irritation, then something warmer and more dangerous, the kind of softness she used when she wanted a crowd to lean toward her. I sat at a table near the side, not front and center, but not hiding either. Paige slipped in through a side entrance a few minutes later and stood near the wall. She didn't wave. She just gave me one sharp nod. The program moved on. A local business owner talked too long. Someone announced silent auction winners. A woman at my table whispered to her husband and pretended she was asking about dessert. Then Graham stepped to the podium. Next, we want to recognize someone whose courage in speaking about resilience has helped many people feel less alone, he said. His voice had a tension most people probably missed. Please welcome Brooke. Brooke walked up to applause. Mason stood a few feet behind her, close enough to look supportive, far enough to look innocent. He adjusted the microphone for her. She touched his elbow as thanks. I folded my hands on the table. Brooke began beautifully. I'll give her that. She knew how to make pain sound clean. For years, she said, I believed love meant shrinking. I believed keeping the peace meant keeping my voice low. I believed that if someone was uncomfortable with my strength, it was my job to become less strong. People nodded. A few women put their hands to their chests. If I hadn't lived inside the machinery of that speech, I might have believed it too. She didn't name me at first. She talked about finding support, about learning not to apologize for existing, about rebuilding. Her eyes kept returning to my table. Then she smiled sadly. Some people love the version of me that stayed small, she said. And some people walk out when a woman stops shrinking for them. The room shifted. Not loudly. Just enough. Chairs creaked. Heads turned. A few people looked at me, then quickly away. Brooke looked straight at me now. He walked out and called it dignity, she said. I call it what it was. Control losing its favorite toy. There it was. Not my full name. She didn't need it. The room knew. Graham knew. Mason knew. Elaine knew. And Brooke knew exactly what she had done. Mason's mouth curved like he expected me to leave again. Instead, I stood. The room went so quiet I could hear someone's bracelet slide down their wrist. Brooke blinked once. Wyatt, this isn't about you. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You just made it about me. Graham stepped halfway toward the microphone. Wyatt, maybe we should. I looked at him. We had a boundary. She crossed it. Brooke let out a small laugh, the kind meant to make me look unstable before I had even moved. This is exactly what I survived. He can't stand not controlling the room. I didn't walk to the podium. I didn't grab the microphone. I spoke from where I stood, loud enough for the closest tables to hear, and Graham, to his credit or panic, did not stop me. The last time you humiliated me in a room full of people, I said, I left because I thought silence was dignity. Tonight, I learned silence is just permission when the lie keeps growing. Brooke's face changed, only for a second, but I saw it. I opened the folder. I'm not going to share every private part of our marriage, I said. I'm not here to trade pain for applause. But if my name is part of your story, then the truth gets to be part of it too. Mason stepped forward. Come on, man. Don't make this weird. I looked at him. You helped make it weird 4 years ago. A murmur moved through the room. I held up the first printed screenshot. This message is from 3 days before the anniversary dinner where Brooke publicly mocked me and I left. Her words were, he needs to be taken down a little, and people need to see him as the problem before he starts acting wounded. Brooke's eyes flashed. That's private. It became public when you built a speech out of the lie. Graham took the page from me with 2 fingers like it might explode. A woman at the nearest table leaned toward her husband. Someone whispered, 3 days before? I picked up the second page. This is a message chain between Brooke and Mason from before we separated. Mason wrote, Make him look like the jealous husband before he even opens his mouth. Then anything he says sounds like proof. Lena, Mason's current partner, had been sitting 2 tables from the front. I hadn't noticed her until that moment. She turned slowly toward Mason. "What is he talking about?" she asked. Mason laughed, but it landed wrong. "This is insane. You saved private messages for 4 years? That's not normal." Paige stepped away from the wall. "No," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the room. "I saved evidence because you people were lying in public. I have the original screenshots, timestamps, and backups." Mason pointed at her. "Stay out of this, Paige." She smiled without warmth. "I tried that. You all called it proof." Brooke looked toward Graham. "Are you seriously allowing this? He's attacking me at a charity event." Graham was staring at the pages now, not at her. "I took out the bank records. Brooke told a lot of you I walked out and left her helpless," I said. "These are transfers from our shared checking account starting 6 months before that dinner. They're not massive by themselves. That's the point. Small amounts. Repeated. Hidden in normal spending. By the time she told you I left her scrambling, she had been moving money for months." Elaine's face went pale. Not shocked. Recognizing. I looked at her. And yes, Elaine knew. Elaine stood halfway from her chair. Brooke was protecting herself. Before I did anything except ask her to stop humiliating me in public, Elaine's mouth opened and closed. I pulled one more page from the folder. "There's a message from you telling Brooke to protect herself before I started acting crazy. That was before the separation. Before I left the dinner. Before you told people I proved exactly who I was." Elaine sat down slowly. Brooke's tears started then. I had seen those tears so many times that my body reacted before my mind did. My shoulders wanted to drop. My voice wanted to soften. Some old, trained part of me wanted to comfort her so the room wouldn't hate me. I let the feeling pass. Brooke wiped under her eye. "You're doing this to hurt me. This is what I survived. You can't let me have one night, one moment, without punishing me." "No," I said. "You used a crowd to bury me. I'm using the truth to dig myself out." Then I took out my phone. I hadn't wanted to play the voicemail. Paper is easier for people to dismiss politely. Audio is different. Audio brings a person into the room as they were when they thought no one would make them answer for it. This is Brooke's voicemail to me after I asked her to stop publicly implying that I was abusive or controlling. It's short. Brooke's expression went from tearful to afraid. "Wyatt," she said, and this time my name sounded like a warning. I pressed play. Her voice filled the space between the tables, calm and almost bored. "People already picked a side, Wyatt. Don't embarrass yourself trying to change that. No one will believe you over me." The recording ended. No one moved. It's hard to explain what silence feels like when it finally belongs to the people who created it. For years, silence had been the thing they handed me. Be quiet. Let it go. Move on. Don't make it weird. Suddenly, it was sitting with them, heavy and obvious. Lena stood up. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away from Mason. "Why were you texting her like that before they separated?" Mason held up both hands. "Lena, this is not the time." "It seems like exactly the time. He's twisting things." She looked at Brooke. "Is any of this fake?" Brooke pressed her lips together. Lena turned to Mason. "Is any of it fake?" Mason looked at the floor. "That's not the point." Lena's face hardened. "That is the entire point." Graham moved to the microphone with the stiff posture of a man trying to save what could still be saved. "We are going to take a brief break," he said. "Refreshments are available in the lobby. We will resume the donor appeal shortly." Nobody cared about refreshments. People stood slowly, speaking in low voices. Brooke clutched her notes like paper could hold her together. Mason tried to guide her away with a hand near her back, but Lena saw it and stepped back from him like the gesture itself had answered something. Graham came over to Brooke first. He lowered his voice, but I was close enough to hear. "Brooke, I need you to step away from the program for tonight." Her face crumpled. "You can't be serious." "I am. After what he just did." Graham looked at the pages in his hand. "Because of what you did with the microphone." For the first time since I had known her, Brooke didn't have a line ready. Elaine found me near the side of the room while people flowed around us in nervous clusters. "You humiliated my daughter tonight," she said. Her voice had the old authority in it, but the room had changed. It no longer belonged to her version. "No," I said. "I corrected your daughter's public lie. There's a difference. You could have handled this privately." I almost laughed at that. I tried private for years. Brooke made it public because public worked for her. Elaine's eyes were wet now, but I didn't know if it was regret or embarrassment. She was scared. She was prepared. And you helped. I was protecting my child. You called me toxic for years because it was easier than admitting you helped her lie. That landed. Her anger slipped, and behind it was something smaller. Not remorse exactly. Fear of being seen. I didn't stay to watch her process it. The apology parade started about 10 minutes later. People who had ignored me in grocery store aisles and at backyard parties suddenly remembered my name like it had been misplaced, not discarded. A man named Chris, who had once texted me, "No judgment, but maybe give Brooke space," approached with his hands in his pockets. "Wyatt, man, I had no idea." I said, "You didn't ask." He flinched. "Yeah, I should have." Another woman, part of Brooke's extended family, touched my arm like we were close. I stepped back before she could turn it into comfort. "We were just trying to support Brooke," she said. "You supported her by turning me into a rumor," I said. "That's not the same as being kind." Her eyes filled with tears. Maybe real ones. Maybe not. I had stopped grading tears. One old friend said, "I hope we can move forward." I told him, apologies aren't a reset button. That was the part people liked least. They wanted the truth to be enough to make them feel clean. They wanted me to accept their discomfort as proof of growth. But I had spent years living under a story they repeated because it was easier than asking a hard question. I didn't owe anyone instant forgiveness just because the evidence finally made disbelief inconvenient. Mason sent me a text before I even left the building. "You didn't have to drag me into this." I looked at it, almost impressed by the nerve. I didn't answer. He dragged himself into it. I just stopped carrying the tarp. Paige found me near the coat rack. She had my folder tucked under her arm because, of course, she had taken it when people started crowding me. "You okay?" she asked. "Not sure yet." "Fair. Want fries?" "You brought fries to a fundraiser?" "I brought emotional support fries. Don't judge my process." That time I did laugh. We walked out together into the parking lot. The air felt different. Not lighter exactly, but wider. Like I had been holding my breath in rooms I wasn't even standing in anymore. Paige handed me the folder when we reached my car. "Was it worth it?" she asked. I looked back at the building. Through the windows, I could see people moving around in small groups. Brooke was not visible. Mason was near the entrance, arguing with Lena, who had her arms crossed and her face turned away from his hands. Elaine sat alone at a table, staring at nothing. "Not because she cried," I said. "Because I didn't leave myself behind this time." The next week was loud in a quieter way. Graham called me the morning after the event. He sounded exhausted. "I owe you an apology," he said. "For what part?" He exhaled. "For believing the cleaner story. For not asking. For putting you in that room without warning you." I appreciated that he didn't try to make the apology pretty. "What happens with the event?" I asked. "Brooke has been removed from the final donor materials. Her profile is down. We're reviewing how personal stories are vetted before being used publicly." "Good. For what it's worth, I wish I had known earlier. I tried to stay out of it until she used the room. I understand that now." I didn't say thank you. Understanding after the fact is still better than denial, but it doesn't undo the damage. My lawyer sent Brooke a certified letter 3 days later. It was formal, calm, and exactly as sharp as it needed to be. Any further public statements identifying my client as abusive, controlling, financially harmful, or otherwise dangerous must be supported by verifiable evidence or immediately cease. Future defamatory claims will be addressed through legal channels. There were no threats, no insults, no performance, just a boundary with teeth. Brooke deleted several old posts within 48 hours. Not all of them, but enough to show she had read the letter. Her supporters went quiet. A few comments disappeared from old threads. The event page was edited. Her honorary speaking role vanished without explanation, which in those circles was somehow louder than an announcement. She still tried, of course. I heard through someone who heard through someone else that Brooke was telling people I had ambushed her during a healing speech. But this time, the story had to fight the evidence. That made it tired before it even reached the door. Mason's fallout was messy. Lena asked to see the full message chain. I know because she messaged Paige, not me, and Paige asked my permission before sending anything. I said yes. as long as it was limited to Mason's involvement and not every private detail of my marriage. Lena later sent me one message. I'm sorry. I believed him when he said you were jealous and bitter. I should have asked why he needed me to believe that so badly. I answered, I hope you get the truth you need. That was all. Mason tried calling twice. Then he sent another text. You made me look like some kind of villain. I deleted it. I didn't make Mason look like anything. I just stopped editing the lighting. Elaine never apologized. Not directly. She sent one message that said, I hope someday you understand a mother will do anything to protect her daughter. I stared at it for a while before responding. Protecting someone from consequences is not the same as protecting them from harm. Don't contact me again unless it's through counsel. She didn't reply. Some from the old friend group tried harder than others. A few sent real apologies. Real, to me, meant they named what they had done without asking me to make them feel better. I repeated things I didn't verify. I stopped inviting you because it was easier than dealing with tension. I let Mason's version shape mine. Those were better. I still didn't rush back into their lives. Trust isn't a doorbell. People don't get to ring it once after years of throwing rocks and expect you to open up smiling. I kept working, eating dinner, answering normal texts, and sleeping better than I expected. The folder went into a drawer, not because I wanted to forget it, but because I no longer needed to keep it within reach like a weapon under the bed. For years, I had thought the choice was between silence and chaos. Brooke counted on that. Mason counted on that. Elaine counted on the idea that I would rather be seen as difficult than actually become difficult. They misunderstood me. I was never afraid of the truth. I was afraid of becoming the version of myself they kept describing: loud, bitter, obsessed. The angry ex-husband who couldn't let go. So I let go of too much. I let go of my voice. I let go of rooms. I let go of friendships without making people tell me why they were walking away. I let Brooke's version of me live louder than the truth because I thought dignity meant never correcting a lie in public. Now I know better. Dignity isn't silence when someone is using your silence as proof. Sometimes, dignity is standing up, opening a folder, and refusing to let a polished lie borrow your name. I didn't come back to win Brooke back. I didn't come back to punish her for leaving. I came back to take my name out of her lie. The last time I left a room because of Brooke, I felt broken. This time, I left because I was finally free. If you liked it,